the CTO Spotlight, sponsored by Livefront. We have Nels from Livefront with us here, and today we are interviewing Edwin Melendez from BetterYou. Hi, Edwin. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get right into it. We'd love to hear kind of what your journey has been to where you are right now. From what we understand, you kind of start off in the music track, and now you are technical lead at BetterYou.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned that. I actually, I come from more of the music world. I had a degree in like audio engineering and production. And then I, figured it would kind of translate well into the tech world. So I went back to school for app development. And then from there, I started doing freelance work. And then I ran into Sean, who had the idea for BetterYou. And then actually, he originally hired me as a designer for the app, and then fired me pretty quickly because they weren't quite up to par. But he came back later and asked me about developing, and so we kind of jammed a bit, and then we started the company. And so I started developing. So he's like the business side, I'm the tech side, and then it's just been a grind ever since.
That kind of an interesting move into technology, and I've heard of it before. I'm kind of curious, what are some of the similarities between when you think about like in the music world, what you have to learn to be successful, and then also in the tech world, what are some of the similarities there that you're seeing?
I think as music, or as a musician, and like production, it's really detail oriented, and there's a lot of like creativity and problem solving, I think. Getting things to sound just right, or just the actual technology behind everything. You really have to like understand your workspace, and it's pretty similar with like coding. It's like you get a toolbox of tools, and you got to learn how to use it. So some of those main concepts are the same, and I just think being around computers just naturally translates pretty well to like coding and all that.
And how did you meet Sean?
We've actually known each other for a really, really long time. We actually went to school together, like, and grew up together. So we've always kind of been friends. And then, I know we kind of like went our separate ways for a while. He started ILOS, and went that route. And it was interesting to see his journey like through that. And then, eventually I happened to be coding and, doing freelance. And so it was a good opportunity for us to just like link up and start something.
Yeah. And for the 5 people out there that don't know what BetterYou is, could you explain kind of what that is and where that idea originated from?
Yeah. So the basic concept is we map how you spend your time on your device, usually probably a phone right now. And we link it back to the things that you care about. So if you set goals, or you want to form better habits around, your digital use, we basically assist, by tracking like how you use your device, and then giving you nudges or recommendations on how to, improve, and set up good habits. So
cool. Since I'm not a super technical person, kind of explain to like a 5-year-old, how does the technology work? Or explain it like you're explaining it to a 5-year-old. How does the technology work? How is it all customized for me, the user?
Yeah. So there's a few components. Let's see, in a 5-year-old's mind.
10-year-old. We'll go a little bit.
10-year-old. Okay. So we use like a series of sort of background processes on the phone that are allowed for developers, and then we basically, depending on the goals that you set in the app, so you'll say, maybe I want to get 8 hours of sleep every night, or I want to get 6,000 steps in a day, or I want to read more. Basically, we see that on the front end. And then depending on how you use your device, that data gets sent to the database. And then we have an AI who, basically takes what you're doing and then makes recommendations on like, how you can use your time a little bit more wisely. And then basically if you achieve your goals, there's opportunities to earn rewards and things like that. So is that
Yeah,
for a 10-year-old?
my 10-year-old brain is reeling. I like it. And I'm kind of curious, how did you, so BetterYou's been around just a little bit over a year?
Yeah.
Or
Since
maybe
about
close.
late 2018. Yeah.
Cool. So I mean, when you first started it started off with like, we need to launch a product. And I remember talking with Sean, you had very ambitious goals of how quickly you want to launch it. Because you do a lot of selling to schools, and there's timelines there.
Right.
Talk about that. I'm kind of curious. That first 6 months when you're ferociously putting together a product, what was that like?
Oh man, it was pretty intense. I guess the big challenge was like the work ethic. It was a little difficult. Like starting off, we're both remote, so I was like building out of the basement. Classic tech startup. And I was still pretty fresh developer, so a lot of the technology is like super new. So just getting a grip on like how Android and iOS work was, just a mountain to overcome in itself. But we were quickly joined by our other backend, our data scientist, Tommy. And, he was able to help us build the backend and like the AI that, powers the device or the app. And yeah, it was, we signed our first customer pretty early on, and then we basically, prioritize like, what are the things that we need to make this happen? So we started with Android first. Figured it'd be probably too big of a challenge to do both at the same time. But so we launched that, used the initial feedback that we got to build the iOS app. We had some help from, outside developer. And then I eventually took over iOS as well. So, yeah, so just those first few months, like launching the original product was definitely a challenge. But yeah, I mean, I learned a ton, and, you have to adapt, I guess, to all the challenges that present themselves.
Yeah, hurdles along the way. And then, now you're in market, you have customers, you have much more than just one customer.
Right.
How do you think about kind of scaling the product? Because I'm sure that you've built the platform, you're now continuing to add more features, add more value inside the product. How do you prioritize what's coming up next? And also that, and your small team scaling it to new customers as it comes in.
Right. Yeah, it's been a challenge. So like with the initial product, we noticed, a lot of like issues. It's a lot of listening to the users, seeing what people care about and what they want, and balancing that with, the technology that's available. We've been thrown like a ton of curveballs when it comes to like how quickly the, devices change and like their, operating systems. So that was, one of the things. But we actually went through like a full app redesign recently, based off of like, all the combined feedback. We've been working for like a year kind of in the background, like, reworking the product to be, more geared more towards, how do I explain it? I guess making it easier to use, and just making it like really honing in on like the specifics of like what we're asking people to do. And, instead of like confusing goals, we try to make them like easier to understand initially. we follow this fog model, if you're familiar with that. It's basically, the behavior model that, if you're something, you could probably like edit this a little bit. Let's see. Let me think about.
Yeah, that's fine.
That.
Yeah, that's cool. I'd be interested to have you kind of explain and walk through, because I think people will be really interested in some of these different models and how they work.
Yeah, so I guess just to reiterate on that fog model, basically, you've got a certain level of motivation and ability to do certain, things. Typically, it's used a lot in tech. So you want, users to be highly motivated to do things in your app. So we try to make that like both as easy as possible and at the same time, like, I don't know, enticing or like, make you motivated to want to do it. So like we try to like design everything around that idea. And we think it translated pretty well. But we'll see that pretty soon.
Has working in kind of this area of behavioral change and wellness changed the way you approach tech?
Yeah, I think I definitely use the Kindle app a lot more than I used to. And I'm definitely like read more or try to use my device a little bit better. I mean, I'm not always the best, and not everybody can be, but yeah, I think part of the inspiration behind even redesigning was, I was trying to look at the app as like as a user, and didn't find it very motivating to use. So that's kind of what spawned the idea for like redesigning, and it's actually surprisingly like working pretty well. Like especially our sleep module has been pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah. One thing that I think is really interesting is your use of push notifications, and not only to help remind people that this is important to you and you haven't put time into it, do it. But it's also kind of cool because a big demographic of yours is younger, either millennials or Gen Z folks.
Yeah.
And I've heard stories of people kind of laughing and sharing the fact that they got reminded by an app to call their mom.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, how close do you work with like your marketing team to understand, what notifications are working, what really drives action, and then gearing the product towards that?
Yeah. I mean, I have a pretty decent understanding. It's mostly, handled by the backend and the AI. But essentially, like the main feature is like, we really want, to be context specific. So we really want, the few notifications that we do send to be really like, hit home. So like I mentioned sleep, we had just like reworked, the entire system for that. And basically, you'll set like a bedtime and how many hours you want to get. And then if, we detect that you're like, on your phone in the middle of the night, we'll be like, hey, you said sleep was important to you. Maybe like, can this wait till tomorrow? Which is, I haven't had that experience with any other type of app, even like with, Apple's like bedtime and stuff. So it's pretty crazy to be like, wow, this is actually like yelling at me and telling me to go to bed. Or, even like, calling your parents or calling your friends. I had a friend who, honestly, he didn't even use the app for anything other than just being reminded to call his parents. And I was surprised that like, hey, if that works, that's awesome. So yeah, I don't know. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, I don't know how to, without getting too technical about it, it's kind of hard to explain how it like really works. Because it's all controlled by a computer brain. So I guess depending on how your goals are going for the week, if you aren't, if you haven't talked to anybody, or if your phone usage, your talking time is low, then, we kind of, tell you to, boost it up.
How have you seen the data change since COVID-19 started?
Yeah, that's it's been pretty interesting. We've seen a lot of since most of our user base has been students, we've seen a lot more sort of like remote and online classes take place. So we kind of use that opportunity to create a bunch of challenges for users to to do in their spare time, like, and then they could earn like some pretty decent like rewards from that. So we had some around sleep and steps, and so we've managed to like keep a decent retention around that during COVID. But yeah, it's like anything, it's been a challenge, but we're still aiming to keep people engaged and busy, and stick with their goals and stuff.
Yeah. I have to imagine that your product it's actually really well geared for schools during this time. And they're looking to engage with students and keep them active, healthy, plugged in.
Yeah, some of our earlier customers have been online students, and the big selling point was like a way to keep those online students like engaged with the school, even uh, because they feel like if you're online, it's kind of hard to really like connect and really feel a part of like the community. So that's one of our big things is we try to like keep everybody involved in both their school and with their goals.
Cool. How about your team? You have a small product team. I've been inside when you were in that big boardroom.
Oh yeah.
You're all very close together, and that's obviously not always practical right now. How's it been working remotely?
Yeah, it's definitely presented its challenges. It's way easier to like spitball an idea when somebody's sitting right next to you than it can be to communicate over like Slack or email. um, so we've noticed a little bit of miscommunication at times, but other than that, I think everybody's been doing pretty well in terms of like productivity and stuff. Like we've been for the most part, like most of the redesign happened in quarantine, so we managed to like even finish a little bit ahead of schedule. So maybe it worked out pretty well for us. But we are a tech company, so it's a little easier for us to
Yeah.
hunker down and
Did,
code
did,
away.
uh, did you get rehired? Were you the designer on it?
uh, Actually, no. We outsource our designs now.
Ah,
Yeah, I do have a little bit of design input at times because I do have to like recreate the designer's designs in app form. Um, so there's always a little bit of room for me to be creative, and I've definitely gotten better since the original design job.
So you've been part of the team from day one, is that right?
Yep.
What has changed for you personally since then? I'm sure you were pretty fresh as a developer on it when you first started, and you've said you've learned a lot, but how do you feel like you've changed as a developer and a technical lead?
Yeah. Aside from you know learning a lot more about the platforms and just feeling more comfortable uh, in the environment overall, I think it's the best way to like, I think about it is, when I first started, it was more around like the questions I would ask are like, is this going to work? Like how is this going to work? And now I'm, asking the questions like, how can we make this better? And like, how can we improve on something that, we've already created? So it's kind of cool to be able to be confident in that. in a sense. Before it was, everything was, new and scary, and every problem, like, I didn't know if I could handle it or not. And, thanks to the rest of the team and all the reassurance over the last, year and a half or two, yeah, it's just been adapting. Yeah.
Nice. What's on the roadmap for your product? What are you working on? What are you excited about? What's kind of a cool feature that we can look forward to?
Oh man. Well, obviously, like I've mentioned a few times, the redesign, which comes out July 4th. So in a few days. It's an entirely new app. To be completely honest, I pretty much deleted the old one and started from scratch. So there's a ton of stuff in that one to look forward to right off the bat. Obviously, our new like sleep module is really cool, I think. And then all the other modules are like education and mindfulness. We've got like places, so like if you want to go to the gym, or you can get credit for that. As for like the future, we started working on some like new badges. So it's kind of a common thing to do in an app, is have like different badges. So we've got an interesting one about like sleep and hibernation, like comparing the amount of sleep that you can accumulate would equal like like what a koala sleeps, or a bear or something. Just making creative connections like that. We're also working on like month in review. So now that we've kind of got like a new way of like calculating goals and stuff, we can create new like analytics over time. So like allow the users to like look back at their previous months and see how they improved. So that'll be a fun feature that we're going to work on. We want to work on like a web iteration too soon. But for the most part, like once we launch the redesign, we'll be, monitoring, and it's probably be a bunch of refactoring. There's new OS updates on the horizon as well. So there's going to be a few things that I'll have to, address there to make everything, smooth sailing. So yeah, lots of stuff.
Nice. Well, we have to take it in for landing. But, is there anything that you had working that you want to plug right now? And then where can people find you online?
Yeah, I would say just the redesign. We're excited to launch it in a few days. But other than that, yeah, just keep the lookout for more exciting updates, I guess, with the app.
And people can find it in the App Store?
Yeah, people can find it in the App Store right now. And if you want to learn more, you can go through our business website, just betteryou.ai. You can learn more there. Sign up for a demo.
And it's relevant for not only schools, but you're working with businesses to help engage with their workforce.
Yeah.
It could be a really cool product for folks that are trying to keep their teams engaged during this weird COVID time.
Yeah. We're, you want to like keep, creating like challenges and, fun things for different organizations and teams and stuff. So yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, take care.